Hey everyone, this is Ben back with you in the Midwest Model Shop. Okay, today in video 9 of the Duchess of Kingston, we're going to get some major work done that's definitely going to change the overall appearance of the hull of the ship. So, in no particular order, we're going to prep the hull to receive the two main whales. That goes very well, except that I'm not totally happy with one little part of it, but oh well. Then we're going to go ahead and work on the transom. That's the area in the back of the ship where I said I was very confused about some alignment issues I was having with some of the early pieces that I had put on. We see what went wrong initially during the build and then how I resolved it, and it's going to be just fine. And then I think the big final thing is we're going to go ahead and paint the bottom of the hull up, which is definitely going to transform the way the ship looks. This episode culminates in basically wrapping up the big holes in the hull, if you will. It's basically like everything just kind of goes on the outside now at this point. And it's ready to go. On to the next stage anyway. So yeah, that's it. Let's go ahead and get into the build. Well, our board's dried up, and I went ahead and I trimmed it so that it will fit up in the bow area. And now we have to go ahead and glue it into position. You could go about this any way that you want, obviously. What I've opted to do, because it helps that the rubber bands are here to secure everything into place, is I'm going to take my glue and just go ahead and put a little kind of dash here all along the route that we're going to run. That's probably a little too much, but it's going to work. Now, some of you may have noted that I am going right over the already varnished wood. The part of the hull's got water varnish on it. And it's because it's water-based, this regular wood glue, which is also water-based, is sticking to it fantastically. Like, no problems at all. So we're going to maneuver this into position, and then I'm also going to have to clean it up. And I've got my plank bender heating up. I should have started that earlier. But this will give me an opportunity to lift this whole thing kind of into position, double check my marks that I made earlier, and then when I feel like I'm happy, which will involve getting more glue up in the front here, when I'm happy with it, I'll put the plank bender on it to lock everything in, get the heat applied so that it all matches up. And the rubber bands in the meantime here are helping me get settled into the right place so I can make little adjustments and move along. So we're just going to do this and then heat it up, and that's it. And then of course you got to repeat it on the other side. But as you can see, it's pretty close. I've got a little bit of an issue up front here. I just got to like lock in and then come back down a little bit. The plank bender will help with all of that. So yeah, that's it. That's how you lock it into place. Press it on. Alright, after the glue is dried, this is what you're left with. I measured this out again. I screwed up a little bit. This ended up about a ½ mil low from what it should be, but you know, you can't really tell from side to side. I think it's going to be fine. And then of course you have to do it on the other side. This side I actually got the distance right. And then you want them to match up as best as you can here in the front. So then the next one goes on underneath, runs all the way across. If it's longer, it sticks out and dead ends flush into the end here. It is supposed to be located 3 millimeters lower than this one. So I've created my little 3 millimeter spacer stick. I'm probably going to start with drawing a couple of dashed lines, and then I'll use this as I glue it into place to to get my depth right. So I'm just going to go ahead and knock that out next, so we have the next one installed. We're just going to do it the exact same way. Pressing on. Well, now we have both of our whales installed and trimmed up here on both sides. I'm pretty happy with how they turned out, I guess. You know, it's all about trying to get a uniform spacing and having a curve that works, and you just do the best that you can. So now what's supposed to happen is they're supposed to get painted black, and as you can see, I didn't clean up a whole lot of this here. What I'm going to do is take care of a couple of things once, sort of. I'm going to prep them to get painted black. I've already done that by giving them a light coat of sandpaper, but it's time to get the whole hull ready to go and get these painted. So I'm going to get my varnish out and start getting a nice coat over the top of the whole hull, all the way down to the bottom. That's going to also fill in some of these gaps that I have on my boards down here, the cherry. And what we'll do, get that gunk out of here, after this varnish is dried, I'm going to come back over the top of the whales here with some 600 grit sandpaper, just very lightly sand it to smooth it out. And then the next step will be to mask this off, the whales. So I got to get all this, covered up, and we'll go ahead and we'll get it painted black, and then we can actually see what we have accomplished there. All right, so we'll do that. Pressing on. All right, so we've carefully gone ahead and masked off our whales, and I want to make sure I can get paint on the top and bottom sides of the whales as well. So I went ahead and made sure that it was up nice and tight against the hull, my masking, and we're just going to do the best job that we can here with our flat black paint. I taped down, masked down, as you can see about this far here. I was a little concerned with overspray, but really only in this area, because once we get down to here, all this is going to be painted over in the end anyway, right? So our biggest concern is just kind of keeping the paint off of the more fancy stuff up here on the deck and the rest of the hull. So that's what we're going to do. So I'll just go ahead and continue applying light layers here. And it's going on nice and smooth because I have applied the varnish, hit it with the 600 grit sandpaper just to take the little bumps off. We've got a real nice surface here to put down a nice finish. So we'll just go ahead, continue painting, and get both sides done. We'll take the masking tape off. All right, pressing on. Well, the black paint is on. It's still wet in some spots. Let's do the big reveal here on see how we did. Get all this masking tape off. I'm sure there will be something that I have to touch up. I don't know if ever in my life I've managed to pull off masking tape and not have something somewhere that needed to be touched up. I guess that's just the nature of the game, right? And then this is a flat black paint, so I'm gonna have to come back with varnish and go over it again. That's okay. Alright. So far so good. I think we're doing alright here. The line's fairly crisp, or at least it seems like it. I know they didn't really airbrush this stuff on, but that's what we're gonna do. It's for the ease and scale effect. There's absolutely nothing wrong with using a brush. Alright, so we've got one giant whale left. Let's see what happens here. There you go. I think that's not too bad looking. It is looking at it from the bow
over here on port side. Now, like I said, I was a little bummed. This is about a 1/2 mil lower than it should be on the port side. I don't know if you can tell. It definitely looks better, in my opinion, on the starboard side. This is the ship's better side as far as my performance goes. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the way it looks over here. I guess right in here I could tell the gap's a little bit bigger, and I'm a little bit disappointed about that. But that's okay, right? I mean, it's my first one. It's my first ship in a really long time. So that looks really nice. What the instructions want me to do next is mark off my water line, mask above, and then paint white. I believe that's what it wants me to do next. Yeah. And then go work on the transom back here. I've got a little bit of a mess. We're going to have to fix a few things. I figured out what's going on. Well, or what is supposed to be what I figured out. I don't know how it's going to play out. We'll have to mess with that. But for the time being, yeah, this looks good. So I think what I'm going to do now is let all this dry. We'll get some varnish on this. I'm going to sand down here in the bottom, and then I'll mark off the water line. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And we'll go ahead and get some more paint on, because the instructions then want you to finish the transom, and then we start doing the cool bow detail. You could do the cool bow detail now and then come back to the boring or not as fun transom, but there's a bunch of trouble back there. So I think kind of getting this sealed up will kind of bring the hull to a universal point, right? It's not like there's a big hole in the front here or anything like that. So yeah, let's let this dry. We'll get some more varnish on, and I'll come back, masked off, ready to do our water line. All right, pressing on. So I think I said last that I was going to paint the bottom of the hull and then come to the back of the ship, and I've changed my mind. So this is your rear stern fascia piece. You need to note that there is a direction. If you can see here, there's recesses for the windows. This is flat, this goes out. It will sit on the bottom of our blue transom, this edge, and go like this, centered. Now hopefully you can see there's a curve here and a curve here. And this board is supposed to follow the curve of the deck, which means the tops of the gunnels here are sticking out too far, and they need to be trimmed back. So I had a problem earlier there, a question, and I'm going to start with this view. Hopefully it's clear enough that you can see both of the tops of these gunnels extend out and terminate at the same point, which is great. And there's a little end square there that I think yeah, will work out. Should work out just fine. Hopefully I didn't go too far there. We'll see. What I had problems with, though, is this area. So this area is supposed to get trimmed off and ultimately painted black. But this side of the ship ended up further aft than on the port side. The port side ended up basically almost flush here. So we're not going to be losing as much of this material. Over here, I'm going to lose all the material and end up flush with the this black piece of trim, which I think is actually correct, which means this side should have come further back. So my solution is going to be slowly remove this wood. I'll probably use a Dremel. Anything that's left extra here, I'm just going to paint that slot black and it'll work out. So that's what we're going to do. All right, so I've marked basically with tape, kind of like don't go past in the right angle point. Got the Dremel. It spins away from me. I also have my dust collector going, and I have safety glasses on, all of which are things you should have if you're going to do this. But it will make short work of this process and get me to a place where I can kind of slow down. So that's what I have to be careful of on this side, because I'm supposed to retain that detail right there. And yeah, it's going to be kind of close. So I'm going to slow down there and then continue taking a lot more of this off until I get to the point where I could slow down and work in the detail that I need to and get the angle right. All right, we'll come back when that's sorted. So I've settled on stopping at this point with the removal of wood. So as you can see on this side, I've got quite a bit of material left. This is all just going to have to get painted black. It's going to work. On this side, I actually bit into it a little bit. We'll clean this up, touch up black. It's going to be fine when you go from one side to the other. You know, I'm not entering this in any kind of competition or anything or hoping to win a world medal or record here, because I definitely am not at that point. All right, so let's see here if I can get in close. So when you set the transom down here in the middle and we push it in, because it is curved, respecting those limitations that we have, this is where we end up. So in the future, what I would do, if you could see there's a pretty good gap here and it's pretty tight in here. Now I'm going to double check and make sure, you know, actually we might not see any of this. I got to double check the instructions. If this isn't hidden, I'm going to put a piece of wood in here, the same, matching this profile of the deck right here, right, to fill this gap in. But I got to look at the instructions here real quick. If this gets covered in any kind of way, we're set. We're good to go, right? This, you could probably just put a piece of rubber band on it, and it would hold its shape and let the glue dry and you'd be fine. I might wet it a little bit too, just to help with things. A bunch of painting has to happen, right? A bunch of paint goes on here, and then this, we should paint the whole inside of this black, right? And then I need to touch up my blue that I mucked up. And then we'll have glue here and here, and it'll work out. So black paint on the inside here, touch this up, and then per the instructions, let's look at those. They want you to get some red paint out and glop it around the transom pieces right here, like so. Because then we're going to go ahead next and we're going to get out this resin cast piece, not 3D printed. We have to heat it up in some water to get the bend to fit the profile. We got to get some paint going, high quality paint, and then you know, we're going to get to this point. But I think we'll save this for next time. I want to get to here minus, let's see here. Do they show it? Must be this step. They put these window frames in. I want to get this to here. That's what I want to do. Oh, and that's the other thing. See this piece down here? I think it mentions it. It doesn't give a part number. I don't know where it is. I need to track it down. So let me paint all this stuff up, find this piece, I'll explain that, and we'll press on. So some comments. You can see my tweezers and some rubber bands. I've soaked the transom in some water, and I've got it all in place, being held in position with the proper curve. The only problem in my little plan here is it's putting a little bit of pressure out right here. This should actually kind of go in more. I'll probably have a little bit too aggressive of a bend with the rubber bands happening here. There's too much leverage on this outside here, but it's enough just to get the shape started. I'll get my soldering iron kind of on the middle here. Sorry, my plank bender. We'll push it in and let it dry, and that'll add some rigidity to this section. The other thing I wanted to casually mention while I was waiting for all of this, I don't know if you could see, my planks are a little bit darker. And what I did was I just took a pencil, well, first I drug a knife through the line, then I took a sharp pencil and I just drug it through the lines to mimic the caulking that's there, and then I erased most of the extra. I feel like this does a fairly good job of giving you a scale realistic, slightly enhanced appearance of the deck boards, which would have been caulked with some tarred rope in between. And if we had individually planked these, I would have just ran a pencil along the inside edge of the board before putting it down. It would have given you the same result. Anyway, I wanted everyone to see that's my trick for getting this thing set after I let it soak. And the other thing I wanted to point out, I opted to paint the insides of the window frames white. And the reason is, the last tall ship I was on, I was in at the Maritime Museum in Amsterdam. The whole inside of the cabin was white, and I feel like that this would have been a white detail inside the picture frame anyway. So that's what I went with. I have to track down this detail right here. I still don't know where that is, so I should do that while I let this set up. All right, pressing on. So moving along here, the transom is glued into position on the back of the hull here. We'll take a look at that in a minute, but it's time to go ahead. I'm ready to mark out my water line, and they tell you to reference the plans to do that. So you can get out, dig around, find your plan. But I'm going to go ahead and measure under the second from the stern, approximately, gun port, and measure that line. I came up with 2.88 millimeters right there. And so if you recall earlier, I had mentioned that unfortunately I felt that I had placed the whale on the port side like a 1/2 mil to 3/4 mil too low. So that being said, this side would be lower than the other. So to keep it the same going all the way around, I'm going to measure down off of this whale to get my distance. And I'm going to put a little mark with a pencil. So we'll center it up. We'll come down our 2.8 and put a little mark. Then you got to go ahead and mark all the way around the ship. So make sure you get it stable and situated and you're happy, and then you use a marking gauge. I bought this scribing tool at my local big box store, and it was, I think it's for marking trim. It was like $14. And it's not the best. It's got some locking features, and we'll just go ahead and match up our pencil point, our little mark here, and we'll run it all the way around the ship. All right, and so that matches, and I just drag it around, and I use very light contact, just enough to create a line that I could see, enough to mask off with some masking tape. And this line would show up probably a little better had I not varnished this whole thing already, but I did, and that's fine. It'll be light. So I'll drag this all around. We'll get some masking tape on. All right, we are ready to paint. The whole ship has been masked off. I did hit all of this with a 600 grit sandpaper, and I'm going to start out with a white primer just to see if all of my little gaps were filled or not, because if they're not, I can go ahead and fix it. Another fun comment, I told you we went way out of our way to fair the hull lines and get everything right, but if you look down, especially in the back, if you've got the exact same shape or very close to it masking a line, then you did a pretty good job. I mean, there's nothing you can do about it now, right? But you know you did a pretty good job of getting the hull shaped all the same way. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start applying our white primer. I'm going to airbrush it on. I've only got so much of this, but it's enough to get going here. And we'll see how our gaps filled out. And then we'll come back with a flat white spray paint, or a flat white coat, because the whole rest of it's kind of a semi-gloss finish, right? I thought I'd contrast it with a flat white finish coat. And if I don't like it, we'll just come back with a gloss coat or semi-gloss coat over to match everything. It's always easy to do. So I'm going to go ahead and keep on painting here and charge one of these batteries up, and we'll come back to it all finished up. Pressing on. So we have our white paint on. I've been in the process of making a real mess around here with it, but there's, I don't know, 3 or 4 coats of paint. I'm happy with it. It's not perfectly filled in everywhere, which may be evident from the video. The reason for that, not total laziness. I want there to be evidence of the wood planking on here when I'm done. I know it's wood up here, but I don't like the idea of this just being perfectly white and fake. It might need a little bit of wet sanding here and there. I might not care about that, actually, I don't know. But I would like to take all the tape off. I'm sure that there's going to be some kind of overspray where it leaked in underneath at the front, and we'll have to do some cleaning up. But you know, this is a step that obviously will dramatically change the entire appearance of the model so far. And so, you know, we want to look at it and see it, right? That's what we're gonna do here. All this off. And again, this has still just been, even though this was kind of a lot of work, there's a bunch of sanding involved, I'm still enjoying the whole process. This has just been a wonderful experience, and again, I attribute that mostly to the fact that the kit is just easy to put together. It's well thought out. The instructions are outstanding, easy to understand. You know, and they do make some stuff that's a little more challenging for the more experienced model builder. But when I kind of liken that to it seems like that thought process is tied to their larger models, which just might mean it's going to take longer, and maybe an amateur would be more likely to become frustrated at the amount of time that it takes to finish a big ship, and they might be more inclined to quit, which obviously would be no good. Alright, here we go. Peel some of that away. Still got another layer of tape, the final edge to pull off. Oh yeah, definitely got a little bit of overspray on the back there. We'll have to I'm perpetually touching up this area back here, it seems like, just for whatever reason. I did find these parts right here that I mentioned earlier. I think they're on a different sheet, and later on in the instructions they call out the exact number, part number. And I've got a couple primed in white, getting ready to receive the gold paint that I've selected. We're going to try out the first piece. Alright, so get this off of here. This is not the final piece. Whoop. Alright, grab this. Oh yeah, a little bit. Well, no, that's just a little flake dust. There we go. And there we go. Okay. Got some dried up chunks of paint and stuff. So we got a little bit. Oh man, I gotta set all this down for a second. Okay. Sorry, that tape was all sticking in my fingers. So we've got a little bit right here we got to clean up. All this. And same thing on port. We got a little bit right there we got to clean up. But otherwise, Look at that. Whoa. Let's change the angle here. How about that? Isn't that gorgeous? Got to get that paint out of there. But otherwise, isn't that nice? I'm sure it's going to get scuffed up and mucked up on me here. Moving around and working on it. But looks good, huh? So this starboard side is where I said I had this whale the proper distance down. I mean, looks good, right? And then on the port side, this is where I said this is about 3/4 of a mil too low. But this line is level all the way around. The water line, I still think it looks acceptable. It's going to be fine when we're all done. But yeah, look at that transformation. Very, very cool. I'm pretty stoked about that. Yeah, so now the ship, I didn't paint this back here. We gotta, oh my goodness, clean all this up. But the hull is basically buttoned up at this point. Got a lot more little details to address, but that's it. That's going to take care of this episode, folks. We'll come back next time with probably working more on the back of the ship. We'll tidy up that stuff, and then we'll move up to the bow and get all these details on, and yeah, we'll be pressing on. All right, everyone be safe. We'll talk to you.